Thank you for joining us today.
Good to be here. Hi, everyone.
So, obviously, as Jordan mentioned, you've been through a few companies building AI teams and performing research and advising people. So I feel like you have a very inside look. You've had a very inside look at the last 5 years of how the AI scene has changed. How have companies changed in their efforts and their conception of AI in the last 5 years?
You know, I think there's so much excitement and potential, feeling of potential about AI today. One of the lessons I learned watching the rise of the internet industry, and this is a lesson that I think applies to the AI industry that you're seeing now, is that if you take a shopping mall and you build a website for the shopping mall, that does not turn the shopping mall into an internet company. I think in the AI era, we're seeing that if you take a traditional tech company and you throw a bit of machine learning or runs a few neural networks, that by itself does not turn the company into an AI company. So with the rise of the internet, we found out that what really defines an internet company is not just whether or not you have a website on which you sell stuff. What defines an internet company is, do you do pervasive A/B testing? Do you have short cycle times? Do you push decision-making power down to the engineers and product managers? Because those are how you need to architect your company to truly take advantage of the things that the internet lets you do, short cycle times, learning fast, and so on. And that's what, frankly, Amazon did really well, for example. In the AI era, actually, Devin used the word AI veneer backstage just now, right? I think AI is great, and AI veneer is great. Use an AI veneer if you can, but I think there are other things that are going to be much more fundamental to make your company truly AI first. And just as 20 years ago, I didn't know, I don't think any of us knew that A/B testing would be such a big thing for internet companies. I think today, all of us are still figuring out what really makes an AI first company. But I think AI teams tend to be very strategic about data acquisition. Sometimes we're fighting these multi-year chess games, to acquire data. Centralized data warehouses, very good at putting data together to make engineers and software able to look at a lot of data to create value. AI companies, the workflow is changing. I mean, if you take the job of a product manager, we're used to the workflow of designing apps by having a wireframe, then the engineer implements the wireframe. But if you look at AI products like a chatbot, if a product manager draws a wireframe for the chat interface and shows you what the shape of the speech bubbles should look like for a chatbot, your engineer will say, no, look, what is this? I don't need to know what the shape of the speech bubbles are. I need to know what's the back and forth NLP, natural language processing interaction. So I think the workflow of product managers is changing as well. So I think those are the fundamental changes I think companies will need to learn to make in order to really take advantage of the things that AI lets you do.
Well, that was a very comprehensive answer. So, is there anything specific? Obviously, you've worked with some of the executives of Google and Baidu, and do you have any specific advice for? Because obviously there are a lot of entrepreneurs out here, founders or would-be founders. Anybody who wants to start a company now that may involve lots of data, lots of interpretation of that data, and so on. They need to build an AI-first company, or they may need to build an AI-first company. Do you have any advice for them, or for people with young companies that feel the need to make that change?
Yeah, maybe a few pieces of advice. Sometimes I talk to CEOs that want to bring AI into their companies. I actually talk to large company CEOs quite a bit, and the advice I often give them, which I think applies to many of you as well, is if you aren't already an AI organization, one way to help your company do the things that AI can help you do is to build a centralized AI team. We live in an era where AI talent is so scarce that your best hope from a very company org structure perspective of getting AI talent in, having them help your company in all this variety of ways is, I think, to build a centralized AI team and then to matrix in your AI engineers into the rest of your business units on different functions. The other thing I tend to advise executives is pervasive employee education, employee training. So for example, in the tech world, we're used to the technology base we use changing every 5 years or something, and then all of us have learned new tools. One thing that has changed relative to the rise of the internet or the rise of mobile or these earlier ways, in the rise of AI, today we have a lot of online digital content, things like Coursera, also a lot of other online content. And today is actually more convenient and more inexpensive than ever for you to just send your engineers, to take the new deep learning.ai specialization I launched on Coursera, or take content somewhere else, wherever you get it. But it's actually easier than ever to get dozens of your engineers maybe to learn enough AI to create a lot of value for your company.
You can get a lot of engineers, a lot of value out of your engineers by having them work 70 hours a week too. There was a little bit of a controversy the other day. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention you were hiring and looking for people who the 70-hour work week was kind of mentioned as a kind of assumed thing. Couldn't you just hire 2 engineers? Is that right?
Yeah, I don't have much to say about that. We've had many strong applicants. We're looking forward to building the team.
I'm sure that you have. I'm certainly have. But you've in the past you've also talked about, as part of your mission in talking to executives and building your own things, you've talked about an AI-powered society. But we're always a little light on specifics with this kind of thing. There's always, with robotics and AI and all these major new sort of genres of technology that are blowing up. We don't get a lot of the specifics. Like what does an AI-powered society? What specifically are we enabled to do by AI that will change our lives?
Yeah, I've been making this analogy that AI is the new electricity, right? Starting about 100 years ago, the electrification of the United States changed every major industry, ranging from transportation, communications, agriculture. Agriculture was transformed by the rise of refrigeration. Communications, all the major industries were changed by electricity starting about 100 years ago. I think today we see a surprisingly clear path for AI tools, such as machine learning, supervised learning, maybe other AI tools as well, but for AI tools to transform pretty much every single major industry. I would love to live in a world where every young child has a personalized tutor. Spending a lot, I think that healthcare, with the rise of data in healthcare, is also ripe for transformation. I actually find it difficult to find an industry, to name an industry that I don't think AI would transform. I guess I was fortunate to have built, led the Google Brain team, which helped transform Google into the AI company you now perceive it to be. There are a lot of other things like Google as well, but there's one of the teams also led Baidu's AI team, which helped transform Baidu into an AI organization. Google and Baidu, even when I joined them, already had a high technology base, they're great technology teams. One of the questions that intellectually fascinates me today is, for companies other than the big tech companies, is it possible to help other companies also transform themselves to really leverage AI capabilities? Because I think the value creation opportunity exists, for the opportunity to help people exists in pretty much every major industry. And if maybe I'm going to say something that sounds a bit naive, but this is really how I feel.
Go ahead.
The thing that excites me, the thing that really gets me out of bed, right, in the morning, that really excites me, is building this AI-powered society where maybe in the future the lights you see, or the TV, or the speakers, maybe your watch, right, would be much more AI-powered and imbued with intelligence to help all of us, to help all of you. One thing that became clear to me was that no one company, not even the large tech companies, and frankly not any one company I could build, could do all the work that would enable society to use AI better. I would love for someone in a city somewhere to figure out how to use AI to improve their water supply and improve environmental protection and improve water supply cleanliness. But I'm not going to do. No one person, no one company can do all that work. So that's why when I over the last several months, I was picking something to focus on. I decided to focus on teaching a new set of courses on Coursera, the Deep Learning.ai set of courses on Coursera, because I really think that to create this AI-powered, today we have an electric-powered society, but to create a future AI-powered society, we really need millions of engineers, millions of you, able to use the best AI tools in order to transform all of these things across society.
So, of course, in order to do that, it needs an immense amount of work and investment. If you were hypothetically going to invest time and money into any particular area of AI, because it's such a layered industry. You've got the layer where people are working directly with the data, assembling and categorizing and classifying, and you've got the models. People are building flexible ones. You've got the actual applications and products where people are saying, well, here's a new cat identification engine or whatever. Where do you think, where is investment needed? Where is work needed? Where would you be putting resources?
Yeah, I would say I feel like all of the above, frankly. But maybe here's one thing. There's tons of AI research going on, and tons of tons of research papers written all the time. Super excited about that. Students at Stanford continue to push for the basic research. Tons of respect for doing that. There's also a lot of work to be done to take even the research papers that were written 2 years ago and to translate them to create value in the variety of businesses some of you might be interested in building. So I think that Maybe just one observation, right? With the rise of the internet, that created room for new startups. We used to call Google, Amazon, and Facebook startups to come in and become very large and very successful companies. There was also room for incumbents, maybe Microsoft and Apple specifically, that did a phenomenal job transforming themselves to really take advantage of the things that the internet and later mobile allows you to do. So I think that today, as we have this fantastic new set of tools and technologies that we tend to lump under this term AI, there's plenty of room for existing companies and also plenty of room for the small startups, maybe one represented in this room today, to someday in the future be the giant company that we can't believe was a startup back in 2017.
And with is there anything that you're pursuing specifically with the jobs that you're hiring at deeplearning.ai? Are you looking at any specific way to improve how courses are offered or administered, testing, any kinds of things like that? Like, is there any specific goal as regards integration with Coursera? Anything there?
Yeah, one of the things I'm very excited about doing work in vertical industries. So I'm spending time looking at a variety of industries to see where AI can help. Maybe since you mentioned Coursera, one thing that I'm personally excited about, this is work done within Coursera, not by the deeplearning.ai team, is Coursera now has enough digital data, has enough data of learners taking courses that the machine learning teams at Coursera, I think, getting a lot of traction using that data to help learners find what you're looking for. So specifically, the pattern you see in a lot of industries, and this might be a useful guideline for you as well as you try to decide what industry to enter, is in a lot of industries you see first the digitalization wave, or sometimes called the IT transformation or the digitalization transformation. The digitalization transformation over time then creates data, and the data can be eaten by AI or by learning algorithms to then create value. So I think that the healthcare industry is a bit further along in the digital transformation with the rise of electronic health records. So I'm very excited about a lot of AI applications in healthcare. I think education, thanks to the rise of MOOCs like Coursera and Khan Academy and so on, that digital transformation is well underway, and certainly in Coursera, but I would guess in other online ed things as well. I see a rising opportunity, and really a lot of Coursera is working on using machine learning to help learners, for example, connect you to the courses that will help your career path. So I think that is one example of machine learning application that I think will help a lot of people.
I feel like whenever we talk about these online courses and which are wonderful and add a lot of access, I feel like we necessarily sort of exclude the K-12 traditional education from the conversation, and that's where I think some of our greatest failings are as a society and as technologists. Do you think that you mentioned you'd like every child to have a personalized tutor? Is that how do you envision AI improving basic education for people all over the world?
I think that there's work to be done at all levels, ranging from, frankly, from better tools for infants to K-12 to college to postgraduate. I think that Khan Academy, frankly, is doing a fantastic job in the K-12 space. The technology you use for K-12 is different than the technology you use for college and postgraduate, because the K-12 curriculum is much more concentrated. So everyone should learn arithmetic, right? So because pretty much everyone should learn arithmetic, addition and subtraction, right? That means you can invest huge amounts in building phenomenal arithmetic content. But the higher ed content is more fragmented. Maybe I tend to think it'd be great if everyone learned to machine learning, but maybe not as many people need to learn machine learning as many people need to learn arithmetic. But so the investment in most types of higher ed content can't be as high as the investment you can make into building arithmetic content or addition and subtraction. So that's why I think the technologies that the K-12 space pursues versus the higher ed and the postgraduate space pursues tends to be a little bit different. I think the channels are also a little bit different. Our expectation for how K-12 students go to school, maybe the flipped classroom, there's a very interesting set of ideas there. I think that for the college and post-college thing, maybe here's one other here's one exciting trend I'm seeing. Historically, the role of the college was to teach you, until you get your degree, and then you go out and do your own thing. The other trend that probably many of you have seen is the rise of lifelong learning, right? Where it's not about the 4 years you spend in college, it's about that, and in addition, the next 40 years we have to keep on learning. So with the rise of MOOCs, I've been very gratified to see the number of people that just choose to keep on learning. I've also been gratified by the number of governments and companies that reach out to companies like Coursera to have us help them. I think Coursera is working with something like 500, actually Coursera 500 companies and governments to help them provide education to their employees and their citizens. And I think creating these workplaces and creating these countries where you have a very encouraging and healthy environment to encourage each employee, each of you to keep on learning, I think that's a very positive trend in society as well.
I agree. And I hope that the education system is getting that IT revolution that you talked about, that rise in data, so we can apply AI a little more closely to it. But I worry that a lot of the data is centralized so much in major companies like Google and Facebook, who have these enormous databases and the engineering talent to take advantage of those. Do you think that a small company like a founder here, are they at a disadvantage compared with? I mean, obviously they don't have $500 trillion, but in addition to that, are they at a fundamental disadvantage in trying to build an AI-focused company or an AI tool?
I think that the rise of AI technologies offers so many opportunities. There's no way for any one large company to do them all. So I think there are plenty of opportunities for each of you that probably no large company is paying attention to. There are some verticals that I would be cautious about having a small startup enter. And those are the verticals like web search that are dominated by the giant companies today. So today, the large web search engines have a data. So I have a pretty good sense of how web search technology works, right? Since I worked a couple of these companies. But the large web search companies have a data asset that tells them when you search for these terms, you're more likely to click on this link than that link. And that data asset means that their learning algorithms can return much more relevant results than someone that does not have this data asset could build using today's technology. So unless there's an unexpected technological breakthrough, I honestly don't know how to build a small team of a few dozen people to build a web search engine that's competitive with what the giants with access to the data asset can build. Having said that, data is verticalized. So web search click data is maybe not that useful. Not as directly useful for example, building a digital mental health care chatbot, right? And it's not that useful for building a precision agriculture startup. And so there are all these other verticals. Sorry, I mentioned digital mental health care because meeting a friend, Alison Darcy, founder of Robot, she's doing that very well later this afternoon. But there are these other verticals that the giant incumbents do not necessarily have a huge advantage. And I think a common pattern is if you figure out how to scrape to get enough data, not for a vertical like web search, but a new vertical, new application you're excited in, you might be able to build a product that's good enough to launch it, get some users. Having users then allows you to create more data, and this creates a virtuous cycle where you have a product that gives you more users gives you more data improves your product, gives you more users, more data, better product, and that virtuous cycle allows you to enter data accumulation after a period of time, so that maybe after a year or two, then you have a bigger data set than even the giant tech companies for that specific application, and that makes your startup difficult even for the giant companies to attack.
We only have a minute left, so this may be a bit too complex a topic to tackle just now, but if I would like you to, because I think you have some interesting ideas about this, should we be worried about the lack of transparency that we find in AI decision making? It's not a big deal if if I don't know how the algorithm works that picks my next movie or track, but if it's picking cancer treatment or a mental health regimen, are people going to be okay with that, or should we be making these decisions more transparent?
I think there's a lot of exciting research in making AI more explainable, and that actually has a lot of momentum right now. Having said that, you mentioned drug or treatment. So today, the FDA approves, and most of us are actually quite comfortable taking drugs where we actually don't understand the fundamental chemical or biological processes that govern the interactions of the drug. But we take these drugs because a clinical trial has shown it to be efficacious. So I think that there's a lot of confusion about explainable AI. I think there are actually multiple purposes. One is if you need a human to take an action, like a self-driving car, something goes wrong, I need you to take over and do something. Another purpose is, we kind of know the right decision, but we need an explanation, like a consumer loan is approved or denied, and we need to explain why we approved this loan or did not approve this loan, but it's kind of know the right decision. And then frankly, the biggest bucket of explainable AI is very human reassurance. So for example, I sense among doctors some amount of anxiety about AI, and I think some of the work on explainable AI is really this reassurance and overcoming some of this very understandable, very human anxiety, as well as sometimes letting the doctor come in to intervene more explicitly. So I think it is important for some verticals, such as healthcare and maybe loan approvals and a few other things. I don't think there's a huge barrier to AI adoption in most applications right now. And I think the fact that there's such rapid momentum and research in this area, it makes me optimistic that we'll see a lot of progress in the next couple of years.
I think your optimism is making me optimistic. So thanks for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Devin. Thank you.